Hey there, it's Liz Gracia, and welcome to another episode of your weekly dose of higher consciousness. And this segment of this week's dose is all about 101 ways to peace. And every week I have three segments, and one of them is the 101 ways to either happiness, peace, or success. And this week we're working on 101 ways to peace. Last week it was happiness. So this week, we're working on 101 Ways to Peace, number 2, from the teachings of Dr. David R. Hawkins and his book of slides, which I'll show to you, those of you that are watching on video. Now, before we get into this, I want you to know that this is the place to discover the foundational basics and essential understandings for raising your level of consciousness and building a better life. And I do all of this based on the teachings of Dr. David R. Hawkins, who was the premier researcher into the study of consciousness, and he's the one who developed the map of consciousness. And my intention is to help you put into context where true power really exists and where levels of truth exist. The higher you go up on the map, the higher the level of truth and perception. So, this week's dose of 101 Ways to Peace is piece number 2. This is the good one. And this has to do with letting go of wanting to get even. Wanting to get even with anybody is vengeance. And vengeance on the map of consciousness calibrates below 200 for sure. It's in an energy field and an attractor field that's destructive, downward pulling, and negatively oriented, which is not a judgment. It's just a fact of the energy field and how it operates. So seeking to be vengeful doesn't help you. And Dr. Hawkins has, I'm going to read what he has to say, a passage in this book of slides. It's a great idea to let go of wanting to seek vengeance on anyone and wanting to surrender any type of negatively oriented emotion in general is of higher consciousness and serves your highest good if that's what you're here to do. All right. So you can let go of wanting to get even if you understand divine justice. And it saves you the bother of getting even because everything is taken care of by the divine presence of God. And this calibrates is true, by the way. God is ever present. Every thought, feeling, belief, action you've ever taken throughout eternity is recorded in what's called the Akashic Records, which calibrates at, I think it's 497 on the map of consciousness. The Akashic Records calibrates is true at that level of consciousness. Super interesting to know, by the way. So all things then karmically have their own karmic payoff, and you don't have to do anything. So in other words, let go of seeking vengeance on anybody, because the energy of that, the payoff of that will come in its own time. And really the person that you want to seek, vengeance on, they got something going on that they're going to have their own karmic kind of inheritance. Like, allow others to kind of step into their own understand and have their own karmic merit of understanding what it is, was there a payoff in being vengeful? And you'll understand that it's a destructive payoff, if you want to call it that. But letting go of vengeance is pretty interesting. And understanding karma is also interesting. It's not necessarily like a negative thing. It's really, you come into this world with a propensity for something. There's a weakness perhaps in the foundation, essentially, right? I'm saying there's a weakness in the foundation where you have a propensity to want to seek vengeance on another. And the ability to earn your karmic merit on that is to really see this energy of wanting to seek vengeance and letting it go is how you would earn the karmic merit, is to understand, feel the energy shift of letting it go into higher consciousness when you let it go. And kind of earning your own karmic inheritance, your karmic merit, like the energy of it. You're going to shift your own energy. You can't, you can't buy it, right? You can't necessarily take it from another. You got to earn it. So let's see what else Dr. Hawkins has to say about these. All things then karmically have their own karmic payoff, and you don't have to do a thing. It's not necessary to bring your enemies down because they will bring themselves down by their own hand. And in that process, you are not stuck with any new karma, which is interesting. You don't want to, trash your own energy field by sinking vengeance on others at all. You just have to learn how to let it go. And learning how to let go buried and suppressed emotions kind of cleans up the whole energy. All the energies below 200 get cleaned up when you let go of any. It doesn't even have to be vengeance. You could let go of anger and resentment, and it clears out the vengeance. And Dr. Hawkins talks about, when you do the process of letting go, which if you look at my episode, season 1, episode 10, I walk you through the mechanism of letting go. But if you pull the plug on something that's not necessarily vengeance, it could just be anger, disappointment, fear, and whatever, any low level thing, you could pull the plug on that and everything above it collapses, which is super powerful, the letting go mechanism, and I highly recommend it. So in any event, you don't want to create new karma for yourself unless you do, because you just enjoy the energy of vengeance and feeling it and going after it. This is an ego thing. There's no judgment. I mean, you maybe very well came here just to do that, but if you're not enjoying your life and it's negatively oriented, you might want to learn how to let go of those lower levels of consciousness which calibrate below 200. So Dr. Hawkins goes on to say, the minute you get even with them or conquer them, you now have new karma, the new karma of that. To go after anyone for any negatively oriented reason only reflects on you in the end. If somebody falls over, it's better that it happens of its own rather than you putting a bullet in them. The mind thinks and the spirit knows. So that's the scoop on 101 Ways to Peace. Let go of wanting to get even with anyone. The level of consciousness of peace is 600 on the map versus vengeance and anger is like 125. A quantum leap between the two. So I hope you enjoyed this. Other things that are going on in this week's weekly dose of higher consciousness is our quiz. And this week, which was last week's one, but the recording got trashed, is I have which is of highest consciousness. And it has to do with, the topic this week is people running for president, candidates for the presidency right now. And we take a look at the levels of consciousness of Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, even though he's already dropped out of the race. I wanted to put him in here to put it into context. Hillary Clinton, who's not in the race, but who's being asked to come into the race. We're going to take a look at her to put that into context because it makes it interesting relative to others. And then, of course, President Trump, we're going to take a look at his level of consciousness and put all of it into context. And I'm also going to share, usually I only ask 3, but we're going to, so which of those 4 do you think is of highest consciousness is the quiz. And I'm going to share the consciousness calibrations of past presidents, which you can include in your guess if you want to try to guess all of it. So we're going to look at Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and JFK. We're going to look at the level of consciousness of those 4 as well and put everything into context. So when it comes time to vote for the president of the United States, you might want to consider consciousness calibrations and what is needed to run the most powerful nation in the world. All right, I'm going to end this by saying, love is the truth. Love calibrates at 500 on the map of consciousness, which is a quantum leap above the level of consciousness of the mind, which is in the 400s. So I always like to end all of that with that statement. so that you can start to integrate, understand, and eventually embody the truth that love is the truth when it comes to true power, true understanding in the spiritual, it's a spiritual domain. Thank you so much. Next week, we're going to look at 101 Ways to Success, number 2, I think. See you then.